I was introduced to it when I was young, the same way most kids growing up nowadays are. It was something I grew up addicted to in the second grade. Any and all free time I had was immediately devoted to it, and any other time I was busy or pulled away from it, I was left daydreaming and constantly thinking about it. I personally believe it was the cause of most of my problems as a kid. I was dangerously out of shape because it pulled me away from a more active lifestyle. It constantly held my attention, making it impossible to focus on school. I was held hostage by it alone in my room each afternoon and for entire summers. Nowadays, as an adult, I find it hard to talk to people socially and make new friends. It's even stolen most of my emotions, and I find it hard just to show people a visible reaction. If someone tells me a funny joke or explains bad news to me, I almost have to fake my reactions to that news. I'm talking about video games, of course. Video games have always been something I've struggled with from my day-to-day life. Since my dad brought home an Xbox when I was a kid in the second grade, I feel like I have a lot more control over it as an adult. I still feel the effects of that gaming addiction to this day. I lost out on a lot of social opportunities and never really developed my social skills. I made two really good friends between the 2nd and 8th grade, but the only reason I connected with them so well was because they also played video games. Everyone else in the small classroom of 8 to 12, people all played sports and were learning instruments. I didn't know how to talk to any of them because the only thing I knew how to talk about was video games. While my addiction story with video games isn't as life-changing or damaging as other stories I've heard on the internet, my experience is similar to the majority of other stories I've heard, all of them having the same theme of being socially left out. So why are we getting addicted to video games? Well, to put it simply, they're fun. Developers use gameplay loops to add a sense of engagement with the player. Gameplay loops are a cycle of completing a task. You are given an objective, you are given an obstacle, and then you are given a resource or skill to overcome that obstacle, in order to receive a small cue that you did something right, like a big mission complete sign or a small visual cue. Every game has a repeating main or core loop. In Left 4 Dead, it's hopping from safe room to safe room while fighting zombies. In Elden Ring, it's beating the shit out of bosses you encounter. And in Call of Duty, it's, well, shooting people. Modern games have many different gameplay loops. They can all range from small things to large schemes that reward you with an in-game item. A well-designed gameplay loop usually intends to set the player in a flow state. A state of mind where you stop paying attention to the world around you and you get wrapped up in what you're doing. It's a state of where you block out outside thoughts and mostly focus on the gameplay in front of you. A conscious state where you don't think about what you're doing. You don't think, oh, I have to use this thing and do this thing with it to make this. You kinda just do it, and it feels natural. Both of these aspects in game design are what make gaming fun, for long or short term. If a developer perfects the game loops, it should naturally lead to states of flow, and a well-balanced state of flow combined with well-designed gameplay loops make amazing games that can make anyone obsessed. But what do you do if you created a gameplay loop that is not fun, or your gameplay style has been so overdone that most people would rather just play other games? Most people who have the player's best interest would probably move on to another game and create a new, more engaging game, using what went wrong in the previous game to make their new one more engaging. Or they rewrite the gameplay loop into something sinister. No matter how bad or good a game is, people will get bored of playing these games eventually. The worse a game is, the faster an audience will lose interest, and the better the game is, the slower the interest goes away. Except you can manipulate people into obsessing over your game and exploiting them no matter how unfun your gameplay loop is. It's called time-wasting content. By adding time-wasting content into your gameplay loop cycle, between the obstacle and the feedback, it can force someone to spend hours on a small minute level of dopamine, and or guaranteeing they come back the next day to try and finish the cycle. I haven't heard of anyone going into extreme detail about this before, or give another definition, so if someone has already labeled this or has a better explanation, I would love to hear about it in the comments. I define time-wasting content as anything that has been put into the gameplay loop that delays or needlessly lengthens the obstacles, keeping you from receiving feedback or dopamine. This could be as simple as adding a time delay between obstacles and the feedback, or simply copying and pasting the objective over and over again. Or even worse, adding gambling into the mix, or as people know and hate, RNG. Doing this could cause what used to be something that took an hour, make 2, 3, 4, even more hours to complete. When the average guy working an 8 to 5 comes home and has to clean up, make himself dinner, do his chores, and then get ready for the next day, he might only have 2 to 3 hours to really relax and enjoy himself, doing whatever he wants. If he gets addicted to a game that uses this predatory time-wasting content, he uses all 2 hours of his free time to play this game and not even finish the gameplay loop he started, it's sickening to me. People who fall into this daily loop get called immature for using their free time playing video games, not realizing people stuck in these loops are addicted to it and can't get out on their own will, keeping them from improving their lives, socializing, and making friends, or keeping up with their physical or mental health. And in my life, there have been 2 different games that have used these tactics to negatively infect my life: GTA Online and Warframe. I was able to get over my addiction to GTA Online because they stopped supporting it and giving it updates on the last gen Xbox 360 platform, meaning that I wasn't even able to walk away from it with my own power. They had to make the game walk away from me in order for me to get over it. However, Warframe still to this day has a vice grip-like hold on my balls that keep me coming back again and again and again. No matter how many times I delete this game, I always end up re-downloading it. So why do I feel so addicted to this game? If you don't know what this game is, long story short, it's an MMORPG where you play as a space ninja. As you play, you gather more weapons and warframes to become even stronger and customize those weapons to make them as strong as you can, so you can use those weapons to clear higher content and get even stronger items. The whole point of the game is to get better gear. In my opinion, collecting new weapons is the primary gameplay loop, making it look something like this. But I don't feel at all like I'm having fun playing this game. Having put well over 2,000 hours in, I feel like the more time I put into this game, the less I get out. Because trying to get new items, whether intentional or not, may sometimes take days because of time-wasting content. For example, in Warframe, there are items called prime weapons or warframes, which are slightly better versions of the original items, because God knows that if there's anything a good game needs, it's more power creep. In order to get a primed weapon, you need to first gather its blueprint and all the respective parts. Seems simple. Wrong. You can only get these primed weapon parts by opening relics, which have a chance to drop the part you need, with each part having multiple different rarities and chances of dropping. So every time you open one, it has a chance to give you the part you want, meaning you have to be lucky enough to get all 3 or 4 weapon parts in order to craft the weapon. In order to finish the gameplay loop, you have to gamble your time away until you're lucky enough to get every part you need. Well, that doesn't sound so bad. Well, in order to get these relics, you have to get them through missions at different mission rotations, meaning if you want to get this relic, you might only have to spend 5 minutes on a survival mission to get past the A rotation to get it. However, if the item you want is only rewarded at C or D rotations, you will probably have to spend 15 or more minutes in order to get this item, meaning that now your obstacle in the gameplay loop may take up to 15 boring minutes of beating low-level missions in order to get your reward. But wait a minute, not only do you have to wait 15 or so minutes, the rewards are chance-based, meaning you might have to do that 15-minute mission 4 or 5 times before you can even get the relic, just to throw you repeatedly back to the beginning of the loop when you open that relic and don't get what you want. But wait, you might not even be able to get those relics at all, because Warframe thought it would be a good idea to cycle in and out possible rewards, meaning you might not even be able to get the relics containing the parts you want in them. You have to wait several months or even a year for them to be re-added to the cycle so you can earn them. And after all that time, you can finally craft your weapon. But of course, crafting things in this game takes time for some reason, and you now have to wait a whole day just to use your weapon. And if you gathered the parts for a prime warframe, you have to craft each part individually, with the individual parts each taking a whole day and the Warframe itself now taking 3 whole days. And the only way to speed up that time is to pay platinum, a resource you have to either pay or trade for. All that work to finally pick up your weapon just to realize the weapon you've already had is stronger than the weapon you just earned, because that shiny prime Warframe got swept under the rug called power creep and will probably never be used again. All the grinding, luck, and timing it takes to get anything in this game is just stupidly overwhelming. And there's several other examples of this. Void rigs are a pain in the ass to farm and take several hours just to gather the parts from completing ISO vaults. The rewards are random, so you're not guaranteed the parts you need, in conjunction with the fact that you need to rank up your standing on demos just to start the grind for the necromech parts, which made a lot of returning players at that time just turn back around and leave. Because wouldn't you know it, unless you grind for a necromech, you can't progress through the storyline. The game makes you grind for a story quest prerequisite, and necromechs aren't even that useful. There's not any good mods to give them for scaling, and you can't even deploy them in normal missions. Speaking of things you had to grind for in order to complete the story, you ever heard of a railjack? You can't even partake in building a railjack unless you have a dojo with a dry dock in it. So unless you're active enough to not be AFK kicked out of other people's clans, you have to have your own fully built dojo. And for what? You get a whole new set of unfinished potential. Railjack missions are a joke. You spend maybe 5, 15 at most minutes in your railjack during a mission, then you board the enemy ship, and then the game carries out like a normal mission. You don't even get to have fun with the spaceship you begrudgingly had to craft. The game in the beginning gives you full, quick, and easy ways to gain new items and progress. The beginning, letting you complete your gameplay loops, get your satisfaction, giving you a taste of what fun the game has to come. Then boom, you get slapped in the face with a never-ending grind fest, where you're stuck in a gameplay loop trying to reach the reward at the end of the gameplay loop. You know the rewards are there, but you're stuck in a sea of time-wasting content. And before you even know it, you've spent the last 8 years, almost all of high school, doing nothing, and all you have to show for it is getting labeled a nerd by everyone else in school. After playing the game 8 or so years, I can't remember the last time I truly had fun, wasting what so few hours I get of free time, just to not even feel rewarded or satisfied for the time I spent playing. And seeing how players are reacting to the new content in the forum pages about this game, everyone seems to be sick and tired of it as well. These cheap, time-wasting tricks should have been left in the mobile game industry, but instead, they make a free game and capitalize on its content. The only way you can skip any of this hard grind and save yourself time is to spend real-world money on it. But if you spend any money and skip all the steps of the gameplay loop, do you really feel satisfied and rewarded?